The dust from the departing stagecoach hadn't even settled when 5-year-old Daisy Adams realized her mother wasn't coming back. Clutching her small cloth doll, she stood alone at Cottonwood Springs stage stop in the scorching Wyoming Territory summer of 1875, her mother's final words still ringing in her ears. "Wait here, darling, just wait here." The station manager, a gruff man with whiskers like steel wool, kept glancing at her through the window as the hours passed. When the sun began its descent behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in fiery oranges and reds, he finally approached her. "Your ma ain't coming back, girl," he said, not unkindly but with the bluntness of a man who'd seen this before. "Got on that eastbound stage, paid extra to make sure they didn't wait." Daisy's lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Something in her young heart had already known, from the tight way her mother had hugged her, from the tears that had glistened in her eyes. "What's your name, child?" the station manager asked. "Daisy Adams," she whispered. The man sighed heavily, scratching his beard. "Well, Miss Daisy, I can't keep you here. Stage stop ain't no place for a little one. I'll have to take you to the sheriff tomorrow." As the station manager turned to go back inside, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. A lone rider appeared from the direction of the setting sun, his silhouette growing larger against the amber horizon. Xavier O'Malley pulled his horse to a stop in front of the stage station, dust billowing around him. At 26, he was already a man who commanded respect in the territory, not for any fearsome reputation with a gun, but for his steadfast nature and the prosperous ranch he'd built from nothing over the past 4 years. "Evening, Hank," Xavier called to the station manager. "Any mail come in for the double circle?" "Nothing today, Xavier," Hank replied, then gestured toward Daisy. "Got a different kind of delivery, though. This little one's been abandoned. Her ma got on the eastbound stage and left her here." Xavier dismounted, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the dirt. He removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair as he crouched down to Daisy's level. His eyes, as blue as the Wyoming sky, softened when they met her tearful green ones. "Hello there," he said gently. "What's your name?" "Daisy Adams," she answered, her small voice barely audible. "How old are you, Daisy?" She held up 5 fingers. 5 years old and waiting all alone. "That's mighty brave," Xavier said, his jaw tightening slightly at the thought of anyone abandoning their child. "Are you hungry?" Daisy nodded, clutching her doll tighter. Xavier straightened and looked at Hank. "What's the plan for her?" "I was fixing to take her to Sheriff Wilson tomorrow. Maybe he can find someone to take her in. Orphanage in Cheyenne, most likely." Xavier gazed down at Daisy, noting her worn but clean dress, the neat braids in her honey-colored hair. Despite her circumstances, she stood with a certain dignity unusual in a child so young. "No need for that," Xavier decided. "My sister Rebecca's at the ranch. She'll know what to do." He turned back to Daisy. "Would you like to come with me? I've got a nice horse named Thunder and my home isn't far. There's hot food and a warm bed." Daisy looked up at him cautiously. "Will my mama know where to find me when she comes back?" Xavier exchanged a glance with Hank before answering carefully. "We'll make sure everyone knows where you are, Daisy." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Do you have any belongings?" Xavier asked. "Just Matilda," she said, holding up her cloth doll. Without another word, Xavier lifted her gently and placed her on his horse, then swung up behind her. "Hold tight to Matilda," he instructed as he wrapped one strong arm around her tiny waist. "I've got you secure." "Xavier," Hank called as they prepared to leave, "her ma left this." He handed up a small satchel. "Clothes and such, nothing else, no letter, no nothing." Xavier nodded grimly, securing the satchel to his saddle. "Good luck, little lady," Hank said to Daisy. "You're in good hands with Mr. O'Malley here." As they rode away from the stage stop, Daisy leaned back against Xavier's chest, fatigue finally overtaking her. The gentle rocking motion of the horse and the security of the cowboy's arm around her lulled her toward sleep. "Will there be other children at your house?" she asked drowsily. "No little ones," Xavier answered. "But my sister Rebecca lives with me and we have ranch hands who are like family. You'll meet them tomorrow." "Is it far?" Her voice was fading as sleep crept closer. Not too far, just over that ridge and down into the valley. You can see the lights of the ranch house now, look there. He pointed to distant golden windows glowing in the deepening dusk. It's pretty, Daisy murmured, her head nodding as she fought to stay awake. Rest, little one, Xavier said softly. You're safe now. By the time they reached the Double Circle Ranch, Daisy was sound asleep. Xavier carefully dismounted with her in his arms, her small body limp with exhaustion, her doll clutched even in sleep. The front door opened as he approached, spilling lamplight onto the porch. Rebecca O'Malley stepped out, her expression curious as she took in the sight of her brother carrying a sleeping child. Xavier, what on earth? Her name is Daisy Adams, he explained quietly. Her mother abandoned her at the stage stop. I couldn't leave her there. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening with shock and compassion. At 22, she had been keeping house for her brother since their parents died 3 years earlier, leaving Xavier the ranch and Rebecca in his care. The poor darling, she whispered. Bring her in. I'll make up the small bedroom for her. Inside the warmth of the ranch house, Xavier laid Daisy gently on the sofa while Rebecca hurried to prepare a room. The child stirred but didn't wake, her face peaceful in sleep despite the trauma of the day. Looking down at her, Xavier felt an unexpected protectiveness surge through him. He had always imagined having children someday, but not like this, not finding an abandoned little girl at a stage stop. Yet something about her brave, quiet dignity had touched him deeply. The room's ready, Rebecca said softly, returning to the parlor. Poor little mite, who could do such a thing to their own child? Xavier shook his head. I don't know, Becca. Hank said her mother paid extra to make sure the stagecoach didn't wait. Seems she didn't want to be followed. Running from something, perhaps, Rebecca mused. Or someone, maybe. Xavier carefully lifted Daisy again. Whatever her story, she's here now and she'll need our help. As he carried Daisy to the small bedroom that had once been his own as a child, Xavier couldn't help wondering what circumstances had led to this moment. What would make a mother abandon her child? And what would become of little Daisy Adams now? For tonight, at least, she had a safe place to sleep. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but Xavier was no stranger to those. He had built his ranch from almost nothing after his parents died, taking care of his sister and creating a home when he was barely more than a boy himself. Something told him that Daisy Adams might be his greatest challenge yet, and perhaps his most important. The morning sunlight streamed through lace curtains when Daisy opened her eyes. For a moment, she lay still, confusion washing over her as she tried to remember where she was. The bed beneath her was soft, the quilt covering her warm and smelling of lavender. This wasn't the small room she shared with her mother above the millinery shop in Laramie. Then memory returned her mother's tearful goodbye, the long hours waiting at the stage stop, and finally the kind cowboy who had brought her to his home. Clutching Matilda to her chest, Daisy sat up and looked around the unfamiliar bedroom. A soft knock at the door was followed by the entrance of a young woman with the same blue eyes as the cowboy, though her hair was darker. "Good morning, Daisy," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Rebecca O'Malley, Xavier's sister. Did you sleep well?" Daisy nodded shyly. "I've drawn you a bath and then we'll find you some breakfast. You must be hungry." "Is Mr. Xavier here?" Daisy asked, sliding out of bed, her small feet touching the cool wooden floor. "He's out with the cattle already, but he'll be back for dinner at midday," Rebecca answered, holding out her hand. "Come along now, the water's getting cold." After a warm bath and dressed in clean clothes from her satchel, Daisy felt more herself. Rebecca brushed and braided her honey-colored hair, chatting gently all the while about the ranch and the animals Daisy might like to see later. "There are new kittens in the barn," she mentioned as she tied a ribbon at the end of Daisy's braid, "and a foal born just last week." "I've never seen a baby horse before," Daisy said, her face lighting up for the first time. "Only big ones pulling wagons." "Then we'll definitely visit the foal after breakfast," Rebecca promised. "She's a pretty little thing, all legs and big eyes." The kitchen was warm and fragrant with the smell of frying bacon and fresh biscuits. Daisy's stomach growled loudly as she climbed onto a chair at the large wooden table. Sounds like someone's ready to eat, Rebecca laughed, placing a plate before her with portions that seemed enormous to Daisy's eyes: fluffy scrambled eggs, 2 strips of bacon, and a golden biscuit with butter melting into its surface. "Thank you, Miss Rebecca," Daisy said politely before picking up her fork. "You're very welcome, and you can just call me Rebecca or Becca if you like." She sat down with her own plate. "Now, while we eat, perhaps you could tell me a bit about yourself." Between bites, Daisy shared fragments of her life: how she and her mother had lived in Laramie, where her mother worked in a millinery shop, how they had moved there after her father died in an accident at the railroad, where he worked when Daisy was just 3, too young to remember him clearly. "Mama was sad a lot," Daisy explained matter-of-factly. "She cried at night when she thought I was sleeping." Rebecca's heart ached at the simple statement. "And yesterday, did she tell you she was leaving?" Daisy shook her head, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. "She said to wait, that she'd be right back. She kissed me lots of times." Her lower lip trembled slightly. "She's not coming back, is she?" Rebecca reached across the table to take Daisy's small hand. "I don't think so, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." A tear slid down Daisy's cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. "Mr. Hank said so too. He said she paid extra so the stage wouldn't wait." The composed way the child spoke of her abandonment broke Rebecca's heart. No 5-year-old should have to be so stoic, so understanding of adult betrayal. "Well, you're safe here with us now," Rebecca assured her, squeezing her hand. "Xavier and I will take care of you until we figure things out." After breakfast, Rebecca took Daisy to the barn as promised. The little girl's face transformed with delight at the sight of the wobbly-legged foal nursing from its mother, and she giggled when the barn kittens climbed over her lap as she sat on a hay bale. It was there that Xavier found them when he returned from the range at midday. He paused in the barn doorway, watching the scene: his sister and the abandoned child laughing together as kittens tumbled around them. Something twisted in his chest at the sight, a feeling he couldn't quite name. "Mr. Xavier?" Daisy spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "Look at the kittens." "And I saw the baby horse." "I see that," he smiled, coming to join them. He crouched down beside Daisy. "How are you today, Miss Daisy?" "Better after a good night's sleep," she nodded. "Miss Rebecca made me breakfast and gave me a bath and showed me the animals. Your house is very nice." "I'm glad you think so." Xavier picked up one of the kittens, a little orange tabby that mewed loudly in protest. "Have you named the kittens yet?" "Can I?" Daisy's eyes widened. "Of course, they need good names." By the time they walked back to the house for dinner, Daisy had named all 5 kittens and extracted a promise from Xavier that she could visit them again after their meal. Over dinner, Xavier explained that he had sent one of his ranch hands to Cottonwood Springs with a message for the sheriff about Daisy. "Why?" Daisy asked, alarm flashing across her face. "Am I in trouble?" "No, little one, not at all," Xavier assured her. "But the sheriff needs to know you're safe with us, and he might need to write some papers to make it official that you can stay here for now." "For how long?" Daisy asked, looking between Xavier and Rebecca. The siblings exchanged glances. "We don't know yet," Rebecca answered honestly. "But you don't need to worry about that now." That night, after Rebecca had tucked Daisy into bed, Xavier sat in his study going over the ranch accounts. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway made him look up. Daisy stood in the doorway in her nightgown, Matilda clutched in one arm. "What's wrong, Daisy? Can't you sleep?" She shook her head. "I had a bad dream." Xavier set aside his ledger and beckoned her over. She padded across the room and, to his surprise, climbed right into his lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Do you want to tell me about your dream?" he asked, awkwardly patting her back. "Mama was crying and running away from something scary," Daisy whispered, "and I couldn't find her." Xavier's arms tightened around the small girl. "That does sound frightening, but you're safe here, I promise." "Can I stay with you a little while?" she asked, her voice small and hopeful. "Of course." As Daisy leaned against his chest, her breathing gradually slowing as she drifted back to sleep, Xavier found himself wondering again about her mother. What had driven the woman to such desperation that she would abandon her child? Was she running from something, as Daisy's dream suggested? Whatever the reason, looking down at the sleeping child in his arms, Xavier knew one thing for certain: he would protect this little girl with everything he had. He hadn't sought this responsibility, but now that it had found him, he would not shirk it. 3 days later, Sheriff Wilson rode out to the double circle. Xavier met him on the porch, having spotted the lawman's approach from the corral where he'd been showing Daisy how to brush one of the gentler horses. "Sheriff," Xavier nodded in greeting. "I take it you got my message about the child." Wilson dismounted, tying his horse to the hitching post. "I did. Hank at the stage stop told me what happened too. Where is the girl now?" "With my sister in the corral. Her name is Daisy Adams. 5 years old and smarter than most grown folks I know." There was unmistakable pride in Xavier's voice, surprising even himself. The sheriff studied him thoughtfully. "You've taken a shine to her already, I see." Xavier didn't deny it. "She's a good child, doesn't deserve what happened to her." "Few do," Wilson sighed. "I've been making inquiries. Found out her mother was Eileen Adams, worked at Madame Lawrence Millinery in Laramie until about a week ago. Seems she left rather suddenly, told people she was taking her daughter to live with relatives back east." "Obviously not true," Xavier remarked. "Obviously," the sheriff agreed. "There's more, though. Madame Laurent mentioned that Eileen had been nervous lately, looking over her shoulder, and there was a man asking about her in town the day after she left. Well-dressed fellow, not local." Xavier frowned. "You think she was running from someone?" "Possibly." The sheriff removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. "In any case, I sent telegrams to the next few stops along the stage route. Got word back this morning that Eileen Adams got off at Fort Laramie and boarded the eastbound train. Trail ends there for now." "And what about Daisy?" "What happens to her?" Sheriff Wilson replaced his hat. "That's what I came to discuss. By rights, I should take her to the Territorial Orphanage in Cheyenne, but..." He hesitated. "The place is overcrowded, not the best environment for a little girl." "She stays here," Xavier said firmly. "I thought you might say that," Wilson smiled slightly. "It would be temporary guardianship at first. I'd need to make it official through the judge when he comes through next month." "Fine by me." "There's something else you should consider, Xavier," the sheriff said more seriously. "If Eileen Adams was running from someone, and if that someone realizes she left her daughter behind, you think Daisy could be in danger?" Xavier's body tensed. "I'm just saying it's a possibility worth considering. Might be nothing, might be something." Before Xavier could respond, the sound of laughter floated from the direction of the corral. Both men turned to see Daisy riding atop Rebecca's shoulders, her small hands gripping her braids like reins, both of them giggling as they pretended to be horse and rider. "She seems happy here," the sheriff observed. "She is," Xavier said softly, "and she's safe too. I've got 15 ranch hands who'd protect her with their lives, not to mention myself and Rebecca." "I don't doubt it." The sheriff extended his hand. "I'll start the paperwork for temporary guardianship. Judge Harrison will be through these parts in about 4 weeks. You can make it permanent then if that's still what you want." Xavier shook the offered hand. "It will be." As the sheriff prepared to leave, Daisy and Rebecca approached the house. The child ran ahead when she spotted Xavier. "Mr. Xavier, Miss Rebecca let me ride on her shoulders like a horse," she called excitedly, then slowed when she noticed the sheriff. Her expression grew wary. "Is this the sheriff you told about me?" "Yes, this is Sheriff Wilson," Xavier introduced, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sheriff, this is Miss Daisy Adams." Wilson tipped his hat to her. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Adams. I hear you're staying with the O'Malleys." Daisy nodded, stepping closer to Xavier's side. "They're very nice. They have kittens and horses, and Miss Rebecca makes the best biscuits." "Is that so?" The sheriff smiled. "Well, it sounds like you've landed in a good place." After the sheriff departed, Xavier knelt down to Daisy's level. "Sheriff Wilson says you can stay with us, at least for now. Would you like that?" Daisy's face brightened. "I can stay. I don't have to go to an orphan place." "No orphanage," Xavier confirmed. "You'll stay right here with Rebecca and me." Without warning, Daisy threw her arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier," she whispered over the top of Daisy's head. Xavier met his sister's gaze. Rebecca's eyes were suspiciously bright, but she was smiling, and he knew she approved of the decision he'd made. It wouldn't be easy raising a child, never was, from what he understood, but the way his heart swelled at Daisy's simple gratitude told him it would be worth every challenge. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable routine. Each morning, Daisy would wake early, eager to help Rebecca with breakfast and then accompany Xavier on his morning inspection of the ranch. She became a fixture at the double circle, trailing after Xavier like a shadow, asking endless questions about the cattle, the horses, and ranch life. The ranch hands took to her immediately, teaching her to whittle simple shapes from wood scraps and telling her stories of their adventures on cattle drives. In the afternoons, Rebecca began teaching Daisy her letters and numbers, discovering that the child was quick to learn and eager for knowledge. They set up a small desk in the corner of the parlor, and Daisy proudly displayed her writing practice to Xavier each evening. "Look, Mr. Xavier. I wrote my name all by myself," she announced one night, holding up a slate with Daisy Adams printed in wobbly but legible letters. "That's wonderful, Daisy," Xavier praised, genuinely impressed. "You're learning faster than I did at your age." "Miss Rebecca says I'm a natural scholar," she reported proudly. "That you are," he agreed, ruffling her hair affectionately. As the days passed, Xavier found himself increasingly captivated by the little girl who had so unexpectedly entered his life. Her resilience amazed him, though she sometimes asked about her mother, particularly at bedtime. She never broke down or became inconsolable. Instead, she seemed to be putting down roots at the double circle, blossoming under the care and attention she received. It was Rebecca who pointed out the change in Xavier himself. "You're different with her," she observed one evening as they sat on the porch watching Daisy chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "Softer. I don't think I've ever seen you smile so much." Xavier shrugged, a little embarrassed. "She's easy to smile around." "It's more than that," Rebecca insisted. "You've always been kind, Xavier, but you've also been reserved. Since taking over the ranch, especially since losing Ma and Pa, you've carried everything on your shoulders, never letting anyone see if the weight was too much." She reached over to squeeze his hand. "With Daisy, you're allowing yourself joy again." He couldn't deny it. The simple pleasure of seeing the world through Daisy's eyes, her delight in collecting colorful stones from the creek bed. Her fascination with the stars he pointed out in the night sky. Her infectious laughter when he tossed her into the air and caught her had awakened something in him that had been dormant for too long. The night before Judge Harrison was due to arrive, Xavier found himself unable to sleep. What if something went wrong with the guardianship? What if some relative of Daisy's suddenly appeared to claim her? Or worse, what if the judge deemed a bachelor rancher and his young sister unsuitable guardians for a 5-year-old girl? He was sitting at his desk, turning these worries over in his mind when there was a soft knock at his door. Expecting Rebecca, he called, "Come in," only to find Daisy standing there in her nightgown, Matilda dangling from one hand. "Daisy, what are you doing up so late?" "I saw your light," she explained, padding over to him. "Are you working?" "Just thinking," he admitted. She climbed into his lap without invitation, something she had taken to doing with increasing frequency. "About what?" Xavier hesitated, then decided on honesty. "About tomorrow. The judge is coming to decide if you can stay with us permanently." Daisy's eyes widened. "Forever and ever." "That's right. If he agrees, I would be your guardian legally. That means I would be responsible for taking care of you until you're grown." "Like a father?" she asked innocently. The question caught him off guard. "Something like that, yes." Daisy considered this, her small face serious in the lamplight. "I would like that," she finally declared. "And I think you would be a good father, Mr. Xavier." Emotion welled in his chest, making it difficult to speak. "I would certainly try my best, Daisy girl." She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Then the judge will say yes, because you're the best and he will see that." Her simple faith humbled him. "I hope you're right." "I am," she said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "And then I can stay forever and help with the ranch and learn to ride a horse by myself and take care of the kittens when they grow up." Xavier smiled, his worries not entirely gone but significantly lessened by her confidence. That sounds like a fine plan. Will my last name be O'Malley then? She asked sleepily, the late hour finally catching up with her. The question startled him. Would you want it to be? Daisy nodded against his shoulder. Daisy O'Malley sounds nice. It does at that, Xavier agreed softly, his heart constricting at the thought. But that would only happen if I adopted you legally, not just became your guardian. What's the difference? Daisy mumbled, her eyes drooping. An adoption would make you my daughter in the eyes of the law, he explained, his voice gentle. Not just someone I'm responsible for, but family. I'd like to be your family, she said simply, then yawned widely. Come on, time for bed, Xavier said, standing with her in his arms. We need to be rested for the judge tomorrow. As he carried her back to her room, he found himself contemplating the idea of adoption, something that hadn't occurred to him before. Guardianship had seemed the obvious solution, but Daisy's innocent question had opened up a new possibility. Could he truly become her father, not just her guardian? The thought both terrified and exhilarated him. Judge Harrison arrived the following afternoon, a stern-looking man with spectacles and a gray beard. Xavier had met him only once before, during a land dispute with a neighboring rancher, and remembered him as fair but exacting. The judge accepted Rebecca's offer of coffee and settled himself in the parlor, where he proceeded to ask Xavier a series of direct questions about his financial situation, his plans for Daisy's education, and his ability to provide a stable home. Throughout the interrogation, Xavier remained calm and straightforward, detailing the ranch's profitability, his arrangements with the local schoolteacher to provide additional lessons beyond what Rebecca taught at home, and his commitment to giving Daisy a secure upbringing. And where is the child now? Judge Harrison finally asked, setting down his coffee cup. Rebecca took her to the kitchen to bake cookies, Xavier explained. We thought it best to have this discussion first. The judge nodded approvingly. Sensible. I would like to speak with her alone, if you don't mind. Xavier hesitated only briefly before nodding. Of course. While Judge Harrison spoke privately with Daisy, Xavier paced the porch, unable to sit still. Rebecca joined him after a few minutes, her expression sympathetic. She'll be fine, his sister reassured him. Daisy is honest and charming. The judge will see what we see in her. It's not Daisy I'm worried about, Xavier admitted. It's whether he'll find me suitable. Before Rebecca could respond, the front door opened and Judge Harrison stepped out, his expression unreadable. Mr. O'Malley, he said formally, I've completed my interview with Miss Adams. She speaks very highly of you and your sister. She's a remarkable child, Xavier replied, indeed. The judge studied him for a moment. I understand from Sheriff Wilson that there may be some concern about the circumstances of her abandonment, Xavier nodded. The sheriff mentioned her mother might have been running from someone. We haven't seen any sign of trouble, but we've been vigilant. Good, the judge stroked his beard thoughtfully. Based on my observations and the information provided, I am prepared to grant you temporary guardianship of Daisy Adams with a review in 6 months to determine permanent status. Relief flooded through Xavier. Thank you, Your Honor. However, the judge continued, raising a finger, I understand from Miss Adams herself that there may be interest in adoption rather than mere guardianship. Xavier felt heat rise to his face. She mentioned that to you. Quite enthusiastically, Judge Harrison confirmed, a hint of amusement breaking through his stern demeanor. She informed me that she thinks Daisy O'Malley has a nice ring to it. Despite his embarrassment, Xavier couldn't help smiling. We discussed it briefly last night. It wasn't something I had initially considered, but now you are, the judge prompted. Xavier looked toward the house where he could see Daisy watching anxiously through the window. Yes, he said with sudden certainty. Yes, I am, Judge Harrison nodded. Adoption is a more complex legal process, particularly given the unusual circumstances. The mother's abandonment simplifies matters somewhat, but we would need to make reasonable efforts to locate her and determine if she is willing to relinquish her parental rights. And if she can't be found? Xavier asked. After a period of 1 year, if no contact is made and reasonable search efforts have been exhausted, abandonment can be legally established and adoption proceedings can move forward without parental consent. The judge collected his hat from the porch railing. I'll draw up the guardianship papers today. As for adoption, we can discuss that further when the time comes. As the judge prepared to depart, Daisy burst out of the house and ran to Xavier's side, looking up anxiously. "Did he say I can stay?" Xavier lifted her into his arms. "He did." "You're officially staying at the double circle." Daisy's face split into a radiant smile and she threw her arms around Xavier's neck. "I knew he would say yes. I told you so." Judge Harrison chuckled at her enthusiasm. "It seems I've made at least one person happy today." "Two people, Your Honor," Xavier corrected, holding Daisy close. "At least two." As the months passed, Daisy became fully integrated into life at the double circle. She started attending the small schoolhouse 5 miles away, riding there each morning on a gentle pony Xavier had trained especially for her. Her quick mind and friendly nature made her popular with both teachers and classmates, though she remained closest to the family she had found at the ranch. Xavier marveled at the change in his life. Where once his days had been filled solely with the business of running the ranch, now there were spelling lessons to review, bedtime stories to read, and a child's laughter filling the house. Even the hard times, Daisy's occasional nightmares, her questions about her mother that he couldn't answer, the scrapes and bruises of childhood seemed worthwhile for the joy she brought. Rebecca watched the deepening bond between her brother and Daisy with satisfaction. "You were meant to be a father," she told Xavier one evening as they sat on the porch, Daisy having gone to bed. "I've always thought so." "I never expected it to happen this way," he admitted. "Does anyone?" Rebecca smiled. "Life rarely follows our plans." Indeed, life had one more surprise in store for the inhabitants of the double circle. 6 months after Judge Harrison's visit, Rebecca announced that she had accepted a marriage proposal from Thomas Whitfield, the town doctor who had been courting her quietly for nearly a year. "But what about Daisy?" was Xavier's first reaction after offering his sincere congratulations. "She adores you, Becca." "And I adore her," Rebecca assured him. "But Thomas's practice is only 10 miles away in town. We'll see her often and she'll always be welcome in our home." She placed a hand on her brother's arm. "But her home is here, Xavier, with you. You're her father in all but name now." The realization struck him forcefully. Without noticing exactly when it happened, he had indeed become a father to Daisy in every way that mattered. And with Rebecca's impending marriage, their little family would change again. "I should speak to Judge Harrison about proceeding with the adoption," he decided. "It's been over 6 months with no word of her mother." "I think that's wise," Rebecca agreed. "Daisy should have your name and the security of knowing she's truly your daughter." The day after Rebecca's announcement, Xavier took Daisy fishing at the creek that ran through the property. As they sat side by side, lines dangling in the water, he broached the subject that had been on his mind. "Daisy, you know Miss Rebecca is going to marry Dr. Whitfield soon." She nodded, focused on her fishing line. "She told me. She said I can be the flower girl and wear a pretty dress." "That's right, but it also means she'll be moving to town to live with him." Daisy turned to look at him, her green eyes suddenly worried. "Will I have to go too?" "No, sweetheart," Xavier quickly reassured her. "This is your home. You'll stay here with me." Relief washed over her face. "Good, I like Dr. Whitfield, but I want to stay here with you and Thunder and the kittens." "I'm glad to hear that," Xavier said, gathering his courage, "because I've been thinking about something important. Remember how you once asked if your last name could be O'Malley?" Daisy's eyes widened with hope. "Yes." "Well, I'm going to talk to Judge Harrison about making that happen. It's called adoption, and it would make me legally your father." He hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "Would you like that, more than anything?" Daisy exclaimed, abandoning her fishing pole to throw her arms around him. "Does this mean I can call you Papa instead of Mr. Xavier?" Xavier's throat tightened with emotion. "I would be honored if you called me Papa." "Papa," Daisy tried the word, grinning. "I like it. It sounds right." Later that evening, as Xavier tucked Daisy into bed, she asked a question that caught him by surprise. "Papa, will you ever get married like Miss Rebecca?" Xavier blinked, taken aback. "I don't know, Daisy, I haven't thought much about it." "You should," she said with the directness of childhood. "Then I could have a mama, too." The simple statement stayed with Xavier long after Daisy had fallen asleep. He had been so focused on building the ranch and then on caring for Daisy that he had given little thought to finding a wife. At 27, he was certainly old enough, and the idea of a partner to share his life with was appealing. But it would take a special woman to accept not only him, but also the child who had become his daughter. The opportunity to meet such a woman came sooner than he expected. Rebecca's wedding the following month brought visitors from across the territory, including Thomas Whitfield's sister Deanna, who traveled from Denver for the occasion. Diana Ashcroft was a widow of 24, with a quiet dignity that reminded Xavier somewhat of Daisy's composure beyond her years. She had lost her husband to influenza 2 years earlier and now ran a small but successful dressmaking shop in Denver. "Thomas speaks very highly of you," Deanna said when they were introduced at the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding, "and of your daughter Daisy. He says you're in the process of adopting her." "That's right," Xavier confirmed, surprised by how natural it felt to hear Daisy referred to as his daughter. "The legal proceedings are underway." "That's admirable," Deanna said with genuine warmth, "taking in an abandoned child, making her your own. It speaks to your character." Xavier felt himself flush slightly under her approving gaze. Deanna Ashcroft was undeniably beautiful, with auburn hair and intelligent hazel eyes, but it was her kindness that drew him to her. "Daisy made it easy," he said honestly. "She's an extraordinary child." "I look forward to meeting her," Deanna smiled. "Thomas says she's to be the flower girl tomorrow." "Yes, and very excited about it. She's been practicing her walk for weeks." Their conversation was interrupted by other guests, but throughout the evening, Xavier found his attention repeatedly drawn to Deanna. She moved with grace among the gathering, equally at ease speaking with the town mayor or helping an elderly guest to a more comfortable chair. The wedding the next day was a joyful affair. Daisy performed her flower girl duties with solemn concentration, carefully dropping rose petals along the aisle as she preceded Rebecca. Xavier stood proudly as his sister's witness, thinking how their parents would have loved to see this day. At the reception, held in the town hall, Xavier watched as Deanna approached Daisy, who was sitting alone at a table, her official duties completed. "You must be Daisy," Deanna said, sitting beside her. "I'm Deanna, Dr. Whitfield's sister. You did a wonderful job as flower girl." "Thank you," Daisy replied politely. "I practiced a lot. Papa helped me count my steps so I wouldn't go too fast." "Papa," Deanna glanced up at Xavier, who had approached in time to hear the exchange. "That's me," he acknowledged with a smile, his heart still warming each time Daisy used the term. "Though the adoption isn't final yet. It will be soon," Daisy stated confidently. "Judge Harrison promised." Deanna laughed, delighted by Daisy's certainty. "Well, if the judge promised, then I'm sure it will happen." Xavier was struck by how natural Deanna seemed with Daisy, neither talking down to her nor treating her with the excessive sentimentality some adults adopted with children. Instead, she engaged her in genuine conversation, asking about school and her interests. As the reception continued, Xavier found himself increasingly drawn to Deanna's company. They danced once, then again, and when Daisy fell asleep on a bench, exhausted by the day's excitement, they sat together watching over her while discussing everything from books to ranching to Deanna's dressmaking business. "How long will you be staying in town?" Xavier asked as the evening drew to a close. 2 weeks, Deanna answered. "I wanted to help Thomas and Rebecca get settled, and it's been some time since I visited Wyoming. Perhaps you'd like to see the double circle during your stay," Xavier suggested, trying to sound casual. "Daisy would love to show you around, I'm sure." "I'd like that very much," Deanna replied, her smile warming him more than the whiskey he'd sipped earlier. The 2 weeks of Deanna's visit passed all too quickly. She came to the ranch 3 times, once for Sunday dinner with Thomas and Rebecca, once for a riding excursion where Xavier showed her the best views of the property, and finally for a special picnic that Daisy insisted on planning herself. During these visits, Xavier discovered that Deanna was not only beautiful and kind, but also practical, intelligent, and possessed of a subtle humor that often caught him by surprise. Most importantly, she and Daisy formed a genuine bond. Xavier watched with growing hope as his daughter showed Deanna her favorite climbing tree, the kittens, now half-grown cats, and the collection of pretty stones she kept in a wooden box beside her bed. On the day before Deanna was to return to Denver, she rode out to the double circle alone. Xavier found her waiting on the porch when he returned from checking fence lines with two of his ranch hands. "Deanna," he greeted her with surprise and pleasure, "I didn't expect to see you today." "I couldn't leave without saying a proper goodbye," she explained, her expression a mix of emotions he couldn't quite read. They walked together to the creek, the same spot where Xavier had first discussed adoption with Daisy. The summer day was warm, the water sparkling in the sunlight. "I've enjoyed these 2 weeks more than I can say," Deanna began after they had sat in companionable silence for a few minutes. "Getting to know you and Daisy, seeing the life you've built here." "We've enjoyed having you," Xavier replied, suddenly acutely aware of her proximity, the gentle scent of lavender that accompanied her. "Xavier," Deanna turned to face him directly, "I should be honest with you. After losing my husband, I didn't think I would ever consider marriage again. I was content with my independence, my shop in Denver." Xavier's heart quickened at her words and the implication behind them. "And now I find myself wondering what it would be like to be part of a family again, to be part of your family specifically." She looked down, a hint of color touching her cheeks. "I realize 2 weeks is a very short time and perhaps I'm being terribly forward." "No," Xavier interrupted gently, reaching for her hand. "Not forward at all, or if it is, then I'm equally guilty." Deanna's eyes met his, hope kindling in their hazel depths. "What are you saying, Xavier?" "I'm saying that I've come to care for you, Deanna, more than I thought possible in such a short time, and Daisy adores you." "I care for you too," Deanna admitted softly, "both of you." "But Denver is my home, my business is there." "Denver isn't so far," Xavier said, squeezing her hand. "Not if the reason for traveling is important enough." Deanna's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Are you proposing a courtship, Mr. O'Malley?" "I believe I am, Mrs. Ashcroft," Xavier replied, returning her smile. "With visits between Wyoming and Denver until we determine if there might be something more permanent in our future." "I accept," Deanna said simply. When they returned to the house, they found Daisy on the porch with Rebecca, who had come to collect some of her remaining belongings. "Papa," Daisy called, running to meet them. She stopped short when she saw their joined hands, her eyes widening. "Are you and Miss Deanna going to get married?" Xavier chuckled at her directness. "Not yet, Daisy, but Miss Deanna and I have decided that we'd like to spend more time together to see if we might want to marry someday." Daisy considered this with her usual seriousness before breaking into a wide smile. "Good, I was hoping you would." Deanna laughed, exchanging an amused glance with Xavier. "Were you now?" "Yes," Daisy nodded firmly. "I asked Papa if he would get married so I could have a mama too, and I think you would be a very nice mama." Deanna's expression softened and she knelt to Daisy's level. "That's a very kind thing to say, Daisy. I think you'd be a wonderful daughter too, but your papa and I need to get to know each other better first." "How long will that take?" Daisy asked practically. "As long as it needs to," Xavier answered, ruffling her hair affectionately. "These things can't be rushed." In fact, the courtship between Xavier and Deanna proceeded more quickly than either had anticipated. Letters flew back and forth between Wyoming and Denver, each more revealing and intimate than the last. Xavier made the journey to Denver twice that fall, and Deanna returned to the double circle for 2 weeks at Christmas, bringing gifts for everyone and filling the house with the warmth of her presence. By spring, when Judge Harrison finally approved Daisy's adoption, making her officially Daisy O'Malley, the decision had already been made. Deanna would sell her dressmaking shop and move to Wyoming permanently. The wedding took place in June, exactly 1 year after Rebecca and Thomas's ceremony. This time, Daisy was not just the flower girl, but also part of the ceremony itself. Xavier and Deanna had written special vows that included not only their commitment to each other, but also to Daisy as a family of 3. "I promise to love and cherish you both," Deanna said, her voice clear and steady as she looked from Xavier to Daisy. "To build a home filled with laughter and understanding, to be not just a wife but a mother, not just a bride but a family." As they spoke their vows beneath the old oak tree on the double circle, with friends and neighbors gathered around them, Xavier marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that fateful day at Cottonwood Springs stage stop, when he had lifted a lonely, abandoned child onto his horse, to this perfect summer day when that same child, now his daughter in every sense, stood beside him as he married the woman he loved. Life had not followed the path he had expected, but standing with Deanna's hand in his and Daisy beaming up at them, Xavier O'Malley knew with absolute certainty that it had led him exactly where he was meant to be. The years that followed brought both joy and challenges to the O'Malley family. Deanna settled into ranch life with remarkable ease, transforming the house into a true home with her artistic touch and warm presence. She turned one of the unused rooms into a small dressmaking workshop, where she created garments for neighbors and townspeople who appreciated not having to send away to Denver for quality clothing. Daisy blossomed under the love of both her parents. Now legally Daisy O'Malley, she threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm, becoming an accomplished horsewoman and Xavier's shadow in many aspects of ranch work, while also excelling in her studies under Deanna's watchful eye. 8 months after the wedding, Deanna announced she was expecting a child. The news brought a mixed reaction from Daisy, who was initially uncertain about what a new baby would mean for her place in the family. "Will you love the baby more than me?" She asked Deanna one evening as they sat together on the porch swing, Deanna's hand resting on her growing belly, "Because it will be your real child." "Oh, Daisy," Deanna said, pulling the girl close against her side, "you are my real child too, the first one who made me a mother. Having this baby doesn't change that at all." "But you didn't give birth to me," Daisy persisted, using the terminology she had recently learned. "No, I didn't," Deanna acknowledged, "but being a mother is about so much more than giving birth. It's about love and care and teaching and learning together." She placed Daisy's hand on her stomach just as the baby kicked. "This little one will be your brother or sister, not your replacement. We'll just have more love to share." When little James O'Malley was born the following spring, any lingering doubts Daisy might have had vanished. She adored her baby brother from the first moment Xavier carried her into Deanna's bedroom to meet him, and she appointed herself his special protector and helper. "He has your eyes, Papa," she declared, peering into the tiny face. "And Miss Deanna's nose, I think. What do you think, Daisy? Should we keep him?" Xavier teased gently. "Definitely," she nodded with utmost seriousness. "He's perfect." Life settled into new patterns with the baby's arrival. The double circle prospered under Xavier's careful management, growing to become one of the most respected ranches in the territory. Deanna's dressmaking business thrived as well, her reputation spreading far enough that she occasionally received commissions from as far away as Cheyenne or Denver. Rebecca and Thomas visited often, especially after the birth of their own daughter, Emma, who was just 6 months younger than James. The cousins grew up as close as siblings, spending summers together at the ranch and winters visiting in town. As the children grew, so did the legacy of the double circle. Xavier added land to the original property, diversified the livestock, and built a larger home to accommodate their growing family. After James came Catherine, then Michael, giving Daisy 3 siblings to boss around and adore in equal measure. Through it all, the bond between Xavier and Daisy remained special. Though he loved all his children deeply, there was something unique in his relationship with his eldest, the child who had first made him a father, who had changed the course of his life that day at the stage stop. For her part, Daisy never forgot that she had once been Daisy Adams, a frightened little girl abandoned by her mother. Though the pain of that abandonment faded with time, cushioned by the love of her adoptive family, it shaped her in ways both subtle and profound, giving her a compassion for others in need and a fierce loyalty to the family she had found. On Daisy's 18th birthday, Xavier presented her with a special gift, the deed to a prime parcel of the Double Circle land, officially in her name. "This is your birthright," he told her as they rode together across the rolling hills that now belonged to her. "As much as any of your brothers and sister. The Double Circle will always be your home, Daisy, no matter where life takes you." Daisy, now a beautiful young woman with the same honey-colored hair and determined spirit she'd had as a child, blinked back tears as she studied the paper in her hands. "I don't know what to say, Papa," she finally managed, "except thank you for this and for everything." "No thanks needed," Xavier replied, his voice rough with emotion. "You were the best decision I ever made." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, gazing across the land that had become their sanctuary. Finally, Daisy spoke again. "Do you ever wonder about her, my mother?" It was a question she had asked occasionally throughout her childhood, but less frequently as the years passed. Xavier always answered honestly. "Sometimes," he admitted, "I wonder what drove her to such desperation and if she ever regretted her choice." "I used to be so angry with her," Daisy confessed, "but now I mostly feel sorry for her. She missed so much this beautiful place, our family, watching me grow up." She turned to Xavier, her green eyes clear and direct. "And she missed knowing you, the best father anyone could have asked for." Xavier's heart swelled with love for the remarkable young woman before him, no longer the abandoned child at the stage stop, but a strong, compassionate person with her whole life ahead of her. "Whatever her reasons," he said, "I can't help but be grateful. Her choice led you to me and brought Deanna into our lives and gave us the family we have now." "Me too," Daisy smiled, tucking the deed carefully into her jacket. "I wouldn't change a thing." As they rode back toward the ranch house, where Deanna would be waiting with the special birthday dinner she had planned, Xavier reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them here. From that fateful moment when he had lifted a small, frightened girl onto his horse, to this perfect day riding beside the daughter of his heart, it had been a life he could never have imagined for himself, yet one he wouldn't trade for any other. The Double Circle had always been his dream, but Daisy and the family they had built together, that had been the greatest adventure of all. Years later, when visitors to the prosperous Double Circle Ranch asked about its history, they would hear the story of how Xavier O'Malley had taken in an abandoned child and found not only a daughter but the beginning of a dynasty that would shape the Wyoming Territory for generations to come. And somewhere, preserved carefully in the family Bible, was a faded newspaper clipping a brief notice posted by Sheriff Wilson all those years ago, seeking information about a woman named Eileen Adams who had abandoned her daughter at Cottonwood Springs stage stop. The mystery of her fate was never solved, but in a way it no longer mattered. Daisy had found her true home the moment a kind-hearted cowboy had lifted her onto his horse and carried her into a new life, one filled with love, purpose, and belonging. In the vast landscape of the Wyoming Territory, where fortunes could be won or lost on the turn of the weather and survival often depended on the kindness of strangers, the O'Malleys had created something rare and precious, a family bound not by blood alone, but by choice, by love, and by the simple faith of a child who had never stopped believing that she would find her place in the world. And so she had at the Double Circle Ranch, where her story had begun that dusty afternoon at the stage stop, and where it continued to unfold with each passing season, a testament to the enduring power of love to transform lives and create family from the most unexpected beginnings.